Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I always wanted to film these updates like at the beginning of the day so you get my fresh thoughts and first thing in the morning, get it out of the way. But inevitably, you know, I'm just waking up and apparently I look tired when I wake up. So it is what it is. Okay, so plans for this week. Now, the voting is done for the opening round of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and my video is going up several days before you see this where I've voted. However, they're not getting released until Wednesday, the 29th. So I got to about 8 books in each category. Last week I wanted to try to get to 10, didn't quite get there. However, with what I have read since I wrapped up the video and what I hopefully will read today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, well, today and tomorrow because they're being released on Wednesday, I will get to 10 with each. I'm not 100% certain on the young adult one. On that one, how I would get to 10, because I got to 9 because I read A Magic Steeped in Poison, finished that yesterday. I thought it was really good. And the way that it ended, I'm so glad that I have the sequel as an arc. I won't be reading that until my Goodreads project is done, but I might just change up one of the books on my December TBR for that one. But the way that I'll get there is by reading another arc. The book's out now, obviously, because it's part of this thing, but I have it as an arc, and that's the Sunbearer Trials. Except for I just realized that I put that on my December TBR. Not quite certain. I'll try to find another. Oh, Belladonna. I will read Belladonna, which I have back there. Okay, so that's a plan for a physical book. Let me grab that. Okay, I didn't think about that. So this will be book 10 for the young adults list. Unless I get one of my audiobook holds coming in. They're not really coming in very quickly. Middle grades, I'm pretty close to finishing that one because I have only 16 out of the 20 that I'm reading. However, to get to 10, I'm going to finish the one that I'm currently reading, which is New From Here by Kelly Yang. The only other audiobook that I have right now is Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor, which I've heard really good things about it, but that's middle grade. So I'll be finished with that one pretty quickly. And then physically, if I want to get to another middle grades book, I will get to The Ogress and the Orphans. So that's the plan for middle grade and children's. I'm really hoping that some of my holds from the libraries come through because it's really easy for me to be able to get these books read via audiobook. And if I don't have the audiobook, that makes it a little more difficult. For adult fiction, to get to 10, I would need 2 more. So I have The Golden Enclaves, which is longer than I would want, but hopefully it won't take too long to get that read, and that would finish off that series. And Electra, which is shorter. So that's my plan. I know for a fact, Ogress and the Orphans, I'll just plan on reading that later in the week, not before the top 10 are announced. So, okay, let's think this through. Starting with middle grades, to get to the 10 for middle grades, I'll finish New From Here, which that'll happen this morning, and Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor, so that'll get to 10. Those are both audiobooks, and I'm hoping for more audiobooks to come in. For young adult fantasy, physically, I will start reading this tonight. I think that will get me to the most that I'll be able to read in 2 days because I'm back to work. If I'm able to, before that, I would also like to try to get one more adult. So that's the plan for the next 2 days. If I'm able to get all of that done with those 2 physically, then I will try for Golden Enclaves and Ogress and the Orphans. And then obviously any of the other stuff that I have here over my shoulder to get those done. I've got so much to do work-wise that I just am not a fan of back to work, back to reality, 3-ish more weeks until winter break. Really looking forward to that. And now I gotta go get some work done. Okay, so I'm actually updating twice in one day, hence the same spot, because everything was still set up. I wanted to come on and talk about New From Here. I was about halfway through this morning when I did the initial update. And I didn't really talk about it all that much because I was talking about future plans. I love this book. I'm seriously debating between, Amari and this one. Obviously, Amari got my vote already for the first round. And I don't know if this one is going to make it into the next round. I mean, I hope it does. Kelly Yang's an amazing author. I knew I loved her books. I'm definitely going to be putting this on a wish list and getting it, purchasing it eventually. But Amari and this book are such different books. Clearly, Amari is magical, supernatural. This is very contemporary, very real life. But they're both done so well. Things are handled so well in these books. And this book brings up a whole lot. Kelly Yang put a lot of her own lived experience into this book. It is set starting in around January of 2020. And the family, so the main character is the middle child here, Knox, and he's in 5th grade. So this is younger middle grade, but still really well done. And they live in Hong Kong. Their mom is Chinese. Their dad is American, is white. So they're all mixed. And Knox looks more like his dad. And so his older brother is the one that looks more Chinese. COVID is really becoming a thing at the beginning of the book. And the mom wants to keep them safe and has memories of little over 10 years earlier with SARS, and decides they've got to go back to their home in the States because they still have a home in the States and go back periodically. But the dad can't leave. And so he has to stay and stays with their dog, and the family goes over to the US. It's told so well. The way that Kelly Yang gets into the head of Knox and portrays him as a character, she models him after one of her own sons who has ADHD, which is something that at the beginning of the book he doesn't realize that he has, but as you're listening to it, you know it's got to be what he has. And then he comes to deal with that. But the way that they are handling a lot of the stuff that comes their way is so phenomenally done. There are times when I'm like, oh, kids, why are you doing this? And it makes total sense to them. And you understand why it makes total sense to them, but you're like, no, you probably shouldn't have a yard sale where you get all this stuff and you don't check it by your mom and you accidentally sell her ruby engagement earrings for $0.25. It's so well done. And she handles a lot of stuff in here. Like there's an incident towards the beginning of the book where they're at a dog park and they miss their dog who's still back in Hong Kong. And Knox and Leah, the sister, the other kid, they go up and they start petting the dog. And then Bowen, the older brother, the one who looks more Chinese, goes to pet the dog as well. But the guy is super racist and doesn't let him and calls him an Oriental. Of course, Knox is like, what are you doing? That's my brother. Why did you let us pet your dog, but not my brother? It sparks a lot of conversations and a lot of things that happen. It's just so well done. I wholeheartedly love this book. She's created such real characters. These kids, the way that she's able to write kids is phenomenal. I marvel at her ability to portray them. It's just so well done. I think that hands down, this is going to be a 5-star book and I'm definitely going to be purchasing it. I just have to now weigh it against Amari and the Great Game. I knew it would be a long shot to beat it, but Kelly Yang might just have done it. Stay tuned because I probably will go back and forth a while on whether or not I'm going to do this. On the audiobook front, I have started, because I read this as audiobook, not physical. And on the audiobook, I've started Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor, and I'm really enjoying that. It's a Percy Jackson take on things, basically, by Jiren J. Zhao. And I read her debut novel, Iron Widow, last year. That was in the YA section. This is middle grade. I'm enjoying it so far. I'm about 30 or 40% into it. I'll definitely be finishing that very soon. And as far as the ones that I have checked out, that's the last audiobook that I have. But there was a deal at Libro FM, support small businesses, and the Babbel audiobook was on sale. And with my member discount, I got it for a little over $5.50. I couldn't turn that down. So I will have at least one more audiobook to read, which means I might just make 10 for all of my different categories, because with New From Here and Zachary Ying, I'm going to get to 10 with this, and then I have to go to the other ones. And I'm going to hope, crossing my fingers, that I get some more audiobooks in so I can keep this up and hopefully finish. So good morning, Wednesday morning. I didn't update yesterday because I did the update Monday evening, and I hadn't read all that much by the time I would have updated yesterday. Gonna start with physical books, and physical books I am reading Belladonna. I still love the design of this book, even though it feels like the spine is more tightly bound than I would like. I kind of am stretching it a little bit, and I don't want to break it. It doesn't break spines in the same way that paperbacks do. I'm intrigued by what's happening with this book, but at the same time, it's not gripping me. It's not like wowing me, but it's also not bad. I think things have been built in such a way that it's intriguing, but also, I feel like I'm using the same words, but it also feels like there's a little bit of predictability to it, and I don't know how I feel about that. So in this book, Signa, the main character, she, like, everyone around her dies, and she constantly sees death. She hates seeing death, like an actual physical being or something. Like, she discovers that she can't die, but also that she has powers similar to death when she's in the state where she can see him and she's almost died. It's captured my attention, but I'm not sure what I feel about it. So that was a long time to talk about just basically nothing. Okay. Audiobook wise, last I updated you, I had finished New From Here and had started Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor. I have read Jiren J. Zhao's young adult offering, Iron Widow, and the story itself in that did not appeal to me as much. I thought there was some things that bothered me about it, but I thought it was decently written. In this one, I really love the story, and so the writing, the skill in writing has its time to shine for me, and I think that they did such a good job with Zachary, and it's in the vein of mythology. It's become quite popular. But the thing is, a lot of times when these kids discover their, mythological connections, the first connection that they have is almost always 100% good, or like they're telling them the right thing. But in this book, that gets challenged, and there's differences with it. Like it's not straightforward with good versus evil, and how do we figure this out, and how can we trust this person even though they've done some terrible things. I really liked Zachary Ying. It's gonna make the middle grades list really difficult to rank. I have books on the middle grades list that I don't like, but now I have several that are really good, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to rank them. The other one that I read, and I read completely yesterday, was Ravenfall. I got it off hold from the library, and I read that via audiobook, and I thought that it was really well done. It was very short, very plot focused. There wasn't necessarily a lot of time for character development. There was a little bit in there. It alternated perspectives, and I almost wish that it hadn't, because I felt like I would have preferred staying in the female narrator's perspective throughout the whole thing. instead of going back and forth between her and the kid who finds himself at Ravenfall, which is like this magical inn, and he discovers that he has magic. But I felt like it shifted more towards him at various points, and I'm like, I want more of her. So it was fine, but not like groundbreaking. And then I just barely started Rise for the School of Good and Evil, like literally 1 minute worth. I just wanted to get it started last night. So there's my long drawn out update. It is currently raining outside. We'll deal with the dreary day. I've got so much to do at work. It's just not fun. 2.5 weeks until winter break. Okay, so it is now Thursday evening. I think I last updated Wednesday morning. So since then, I've finished one book physically, and I have started and finished one book via audiobook and started another one. So the updates. The book that I read completely since the last update via audiobook is The Rise for the School of Good and Evil. I thought I might be able to get away with not having read any of the series or not knowing any of the series. I have a feeling that a lot of my understanding, not just part of it, suffered because I haven't read the original story. I don't know that I'm all that interested in it. I might not. I don't understand how the School for Good and Evil really works. That concept, it doesn't work in my brain, basically. But The Rise for School of Good and Evil is supposed to tell the story of how the school originated. And I think part of the problem was I don't know how the school looks. So when the story opens and there's already a school for good and evil, I'm like, how is this an origin story? Did I do myself a disservice? Probably. But also the book felt really oddly paced and unfocused. I think it's supposed to be the story of the two brothers running the school. However, you would get perspectives from the other characters like Aladdin, like Hook, who come into the story and play a somewhat pivotal role, but you never really see their story play out. You get little bits and pieces, so it feels unevenly paced. And the whole story, I just kind of was like, I don't understand where these things are going. And the magic seemed rather convenient and not defined. So not my favorite choice. I don't remember whether that made it to the next round or not. I don't think it did, but it might have. The book that I finished physically is Belladonna. And I have complicated thoughts on this. I definitely will be keeping it. I enjoyed it enough to keep it. I didn't realize that it was the first in the series. I don't know if I enjoyed it enough to read the second book or to purchase a special edition. I probably will read the second book, trying to get better about finishing series. But I thought that this had a really interesting premise. The way that Signa was raised, her interactions with death. I did, as I was looking ahead to see if a particular character survived, I did spoil myself for one of the reveals. And so I started to look for hints along the way about that reveal. I had picked up that there was something different about a particular character. And when I saw that reveal, it made sense. But as I kept reading, I couldn't necessarily put the pieces together for the reveal that happened and how it happened and it was supposed to be one thing all along. One of the things that I can't wrap my head around is how Death never remembers being human, and yet Signa is clearly something very similar, if not the same, as Death. She's a Reaper, but she's definitely human. That I couldn't really rectify, and maybe that's explained in the sequel when it comes out. But I will say the mystery of what was going on, that was well done. I was constantly trying to figure out the things going on behind the scenes, and I think that was well done. There were just a few things that didn't quite make sense, which probably is going to net this a 4-star, low 4-star, maybe a 4.5, but probably a 4-star. So it was good, but not great. So I am glad I have this really pretty version, and I love the way the texture on the cover feels, and even the pages feel older, more gothic. I did like the gothic vibes in here, so maybe I need to read more gothic fiction. The book that I started via audiobook, and I really wish that the audiobook for the sequel, the one that's actually on the Goodreads Choice Awards list, I wish it weren't taking so long. So the book that I started with was The City We Became. I don't know that I've ever heard Robin Miles before, her actual narrations, but I've heard that she's an amazing narrator. Now having heard her narration, she's an amazing narrator. The way that she does these different voices and fully embodies those characters is so well done. And it's so crucial to this story, because that's the whole big thing, is about New York is becoming alive and has these different avatars who represent different things about New York. And if you had a narrator that read everybody pretty much the same, or didn't get certain aspects right in the way that they were portrayed vocally, that would have been terrible. But the way that Robin Miles does this, it is so well done. I will say, it was really confusing at first, the opening portion, because you are just dropped in to the beginning and this thing happening to New York. Nothing is really explained. And you switch perspectives because, well, I'm not going to go into details, but you switch perspectives pretty quickly. There's scenes at the beginning and then something dramatic that as each avatar is waking up, they're referencing back to. That part was a little bit confusing to me, and I think it was partially because I was listening to it on audiobook as I was working, but also partially just because there's a lot happening and it's a fire hose of completely new magic system. To me, this feels almost more like science fiction than fantasy. It feels really like a blend of the two. And now thinking back, I have heard descriptions of N.K. Jemisin's other works that talk about a blend between science fiction and fantasy. So I can see it in this one. As each of these avatars for the boroughs are coming alive, it is so clearly a love song to New York, a love story for New York, which people have described this before. And I'm really intrigued with the way that N.K. Jemisin is unfolding the story. So I'm excited to get back to that. After this, the only audiobook that I have available is Babel. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have so many on hold, but they're taking forever to come in. But physically, I think I'll pick up The Ballad of Never After next, or Electra. I haven't decided. It's going to be either young adult fantasy or adult fantasy. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so it is Sunday morning. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the vlog. I didn't end up getting around to updating yesterday. As I've been thinking about this, I'm definitely going to go through a rebrand in the new year and make my reading vlogs recent reads, because I don't do a lot of actual vlogging, like life stuff. I had to adjust the camera angle there. So I'm going to rebrand them then. But for the remainder of December, through what I should have called Bookmas, not Vlogmas, because I'm not actually vlogging for most of these videos. But for the remainder, I'm going to call them reading vlogs. So I have a longer update than usual for one day. Obviously, I've been reading a lot as well. So I'm going to start with the audiobook that I was reading the last time that I left off, and that is The City We Became. I'm definitely adding this to a want to read list. This is amazing. This is not a book that I thought that I would have been interested in. And as this was talked about when I first started getting into booktube, which was just after the heyday of this book, I didn't really think that I was interested. But when I saw the sequel on the list for this year, I was like, okay, I'll go ahead, I'll give it a try. And this ended up being my first N.K. Jemisin book. and she might be a new favorite author. The way that she was able to characterize these different avatars of boroughs in New York, brilliant. And the way that specifically with Staten Island, in my reaction video I said Long Island, I'm so sorry, Staten Island, specifically with Staten Island, and the way that she is characterized, Staten Island, it seems like the oddball borough in New York, and it's talked about in here. It's very Republican leaning. It's the oddball, basically. When people think of New York City, they don't think of Staten Island. And Staten Island is torn between whether it thinks it's part of the city or it wants to be different than the city. And Iceland, the avatar, that's her name, she feels the same way. She's been raised in a very controlling environment, specifically with her father, and all of these different bigotries have been built into her worldview. That is her paradigm. That's what she knows. So when she encounters things that are different than that, she tries to make sense of these things that don't fit, like with the lady in white, by putting it into her paradigm. And her paradigm is that people that are white are the good guys. So when something seems off, she tries to fit it that way. And so she's more susceptible to the lady in white. And the way that Jemison writes Island's character and how she is trying to figure these out, it's brilliant, but it's so heart-wrenching because it's so true. And I cannot wait to read the sequel. I'm gonna go actually purchase the audiobook for it, because the way to read this is audiobook with Robin Miles' narration. I want to find all of the books that she's narrated and read those, because top-notch narrator. Hands down, this is one of my favorite discoveries. I think I might have a favorite discovery in each of the categories that I've read in. New from here in middle grade, and so far The City We Became in adult fantasy. Then physically, I believe I had just started Electra, and I finished this. This was a quick read. I'm torn with how to rate this because Jennifer Saint's writing is gorgeous. The way that she tells this myth and the story of these three women, Clytemnestra, Electra, and Cassandra, it's so tragic and heartbreaking. But my enjoyment of the book was so low just because this story is so utterly without hope. It feels like these characters don't learn anything. It feels like their lives are destined to be tragic, which is what the myth is, which is why probably I'm not a huge Greek myth retelling fan. I don't run out and grab these books. So this is lower ranked for me, not because of the writing itself, which is wonderful, but because of the tone of the book, which you can't avoid when you accurately retell these stories. So then I have a stand-in book because I wanted to have a book to hold for Foul Lady Fortune. I'm not going to hold it up while I talk about it. I'm going to put up the image, but in my thumbnail, I'm going to have a stand-in book. Foul Lady Fortune I read as an ebook, and this blew me out of the water. I had the opportunity last year to read the duology that precedes this, but I chose not to because I wasn't into, like, things had been described that I was kind of like, I don't know about this. Now, having read Foul Lady Fortune, I probably am going to go back and read those and give it a shot because it's almost like The City We Became. The sort of stuff, the hesitation that I had, but I went ahead and I discovered something good. So maybe I will with These Violent Delights duology. Foul Lady Fortune, I loved the exploration of the historical with just a touch of fantasy going on with it and what has happened to the main character, Lady Fortune. And I think it was so well done. And the tensions between, so it's set in China during the time, during the early 1930s, when Japan is expanding its empire and taking over Manchuria, but you've also got the civil war brewing that gets tamped down by Japan, but then erupts after World War II between the nationalists and the communists. And the way that Chloe Gong talks about these different things and has these two characters with family members on both sides, I thought was well done. And what she does to one of the characters at the end of this book, I really want to read the sequel. So I probably will purchase Foul Lady Fortune and add it to my collection. This was an unexpected surprise. Was it the best book ever? No, but I really enjoyed it. There we have all of the books that I read this week, physically, aka not via audiobook. I read, let's see, we've got physically, I think I guess Belladonna, Electra, and Foul Lady Fortune. And then audiobook wise, I read A Magic Steeped in Poison, New From Here, The City We Became, and what is this one standing for? Oh, Zachary Yang and the Dragon Emperor. So these were all really good. I had a really good reading week. So I will definitely take that for sure. And that's a total of 7 books. That's not too shabby for a work week. Of course, the bulk is audio. Let's see how many I can get read next week. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.